Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
Well, today we're going to be talking to Sheriff Mike Milstead of Minnehaha County and Chief Deputy Michelle Boyd. So I asked Mike to talk to us because, as I said to him on the phone the other day, you know, when you're on the TV, you get about 1 minute to 2 minutes to talk about a very large project like a $40 million jail, and you really don't get to say all the things you want to say. Right. So we're going to talk about the jail, and maybe we'll get into some other stuff. So tell us why, the basic reason why the jail we need to expand.
Well, you know, I'll give you a really quick history lesson, and that was about 17 years ago. I came to the citizens and I said, we've got an aging, outdated facility that needs to be replaced. And that was the jail in the public safety building, overcrowded and poorly designed. And about 15 years ago, then the commission decided to build the jail that we currently have, the 400-bed jail of a new design, and that has served us very well. In fact, when we moved into that jail, we had over 100 empty beds that we filled with, I'll call them renting or paying customers from other jurisdictions and the Marshal Service. And that helped pay for part of the debt service and the operation of that facility. And we knew all along that within about a 10 to 12 year period, we would have to push all the other, or squeeze all the other agencies out because our own demand would meet, you know, the needs of that jail. And at that time, we had an inmate population forecast done that looks at historic data and future data, and actually the person who did that population forecast was spot on, and that's where we're at today. So now at one time we had over 100 federal prisoners and 50 other jurisdiction prisoners paying, you know, $70 to $80 a day. So we were taking sometimes $8,000 a day in offsetting revenue to help our expenses. Today I have 5 federal inmates, and I almost have no other jurisdiction inmates. I don't house for the Department of Corrections anymore, other than their holds. And we've got an aging facility, not the downtown jail, the 400-bed downtown jail, but instead the Elks Club on West Russell. In 2012, so almost 3 years ago, we had the National Institute of Corrections under the Department of Justice. We requested that they come out and review that facility and do what's called a jail and justice system assessment. They looked at the systems that we have, the correctional system, and clearly made it, you know, supported the fact that it needs to be replaced. That was 3 years ago. And some of the things they pointed out is, you know, it was designed as an Elks Club. I had steak dinner there, you know, and actually we finally removed some of the velvet wallpaper, but
I've had some friends that took up some time there.
Yeah.
So they've told me what it looks like.
And you know, it served this county very well for 20 years. And it was a very necessary move. And it was in an era where lower risk offenders were put on work release, and there weren't really other opportunities for monitoring low risk offenders outside of custody. So our numbers out there used to be high, 160 plus people that would be out on work release. We'd feed them, we'd send them out, they'd come back and stay in our facility. Large dorm areas, low risk offenders, didn't have to worry about them running away because they got to leave every day to go to work anyway. Well, if you fast forward now to today's date, we've really changed in our criminal justice system, and probably in this jurisdiction, and I'll say Minnehaha County and South Dakota as well, but specifically our county is probably one of the most aggressive counties there is when it comes to alternatives to incarceration. So we have the 24/7 Scram program, which, you know, 24/7 people come into the sheriff's office twice a day and blow in an alcohol tester to see if they're hot or not. And there's an immediate consequence that they immediately go to jail for a short period of time, but there's an immediate consequence. We have that program in place, and we piloted that for then Attorney General Larry Long. And we have the Scram bracelets, which are alcohol monitors for your And with all of those systems, believe it or not, today, I have over 700 people that I'm monitoring that are not in custody. They're in one of those programs. And then so a lot of our 160 work release people then went out onto programs like that instead. So our number of demand for work release beds went down. Then we added to that with the new technology of electronic monitoring. We've added the use of GPS tracking devices for people on work release. And so 60 of my current work release inmates are on GPS trackers, and they come in an alcohol test. So my need for low risk, non-secure jail beds is down to almost nothing, a handful. And so we've actually intentionally reduced our population at the corrections center, and now it primarily houses maybe 20 work release inmates, but the rest of the inmates out there are people who should be in a regular jail, who need regular secure jail beds. There are lowest risk offenders that should be in the downtown jail, but we're moving them out there as we fill up and try to make sure that our more serious offenders are downtown. None of them should probably be regularly held out of a regular jail, but we're using it as a jail overflow. So I'm coming to the community after what we got our reports back, saying, look, it's time again. And in fact, 3 years ago, it's time again to start moving forward on replacing that facility with secure jail beds. Now, it's actually not bad timing for that facility because it's 4.5 acres on a golf course across the street from the new event center. So the real estate is pretty valuable real estate. And there's motel properties and
not to interrupt you there, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was gonna be kind of what I said. I've been hearing talk that yes, there's a lot of people who are very interested in that property, developers, hotel, and I'm sure you're hearing the same thing.
Absolutely.
And that is owned by the county then?
The
county owns it, so if it gets sold, the county would sell it to whoever, okay.
That's correct. And I know that there's interest in motels and restaurants, likely even breaking ground in that immediate area within the year. And so obviously having a correctional facility and people in stripes out, mowing the lawn is not the best environment. It's outgrown its usefulness, number one. And number two is, it was never intended to be a secure detention facility. Now, we have modified the lower unit and put bars on the windows, but it's still the plate glass windows. It's still not a quote secure facility like the downtown jail. And my warden, Warden Gromer, almost daily, and I can tell you weekly, has to work with his staff to go through the list of our offenders in jail to say, who could I move out into that facility and just put in that open dorm area out by the golf course and feel relatively comfortable that they're out there. And so that's a very difficult position to be in. One of the reasons it is if the commission was to say today, if they found money and they were to say today, build the jail, let's go forward, all full speed ahead, it's 3 years from opening. And our projections, we actually hired the same person that gave our projections the last time, 15 years ago, to give our projections again. And our numbers are continuing to go up, a huge increase in felony case filings in the last 5 to 10 years. All you have to do is go online or watch television or read the blogs or whatever, and you're gonna see robberies, rapes, murders involving multiple co-defendants. Well, all of those people spend months, if not over a year, in the county jail before they even have their day in court. And then after their day in court, they spend months again with us as they wait for their pre-sentence investigation to occur. If it's a rape, maybe a psychosexual evaluation that has to occur. All that time is in the county jail. People will think it's a county jail, that's just where, Otis the drunk is, and that's where the guy that smoked marijuana on the corner, they got him in jail and he's taking up all the jail bed space. That's totally wrong. In fact, we've published online, it's updated every 15 minutes. If you go to the county website, and then you click on who's behind bars, we publish everybody that's in our custody, and you look at, it'll say facility, it'll be jail, or the correction center, or CCC, or EM, electronic monitoring. But if you go down the list of the people that are in jail today, and I just pulled up and went alphabetically today, starting at A, and you have people in there on multiple offenses, they're high-risk offenders, co-defendants on murders, they're rape, robbery, burglary, very few possession of a drug, quite a few possession with intent to distribute, so they're dealers in drugs. A lot of domestic cases, a lot of aggravated assault domestic cases, not the kind of people that you want in our community. Now, if I was with any government agency as an elected official overseeing the general government, let's just say like the city, if one of our critical infrastructure components in our community was, overtaxed and overburdened and needed to be expanded, I would just do it. I would tell my council or whatever, I'd say, we need to move forward. And we're at that point with this, and the commission made a decision just this week, and a very difficult decision, to start that process. Now, they didn't go very far, they didn't commit to the size, which is fine, but they did commit to at least a location, so they...
This is something that, architecture is one of my, things I enjoy doing and studying, and I've looked at, I followed the example of what Sioux Valley Hospital did 40 years ago when they built on the wing over on the east side, and they built it, with a fantastic theory in mind that they could, as they needed it, they could keep building up. They did the same concept here with the courthouse, where they built the foundation and the lower structure. So as the town grew, as the area grew, as the need grew, they could add another floor or 2 floors. And I think this courthouse may have one more floor that it could go up.
The jail, actually 15 years ago when we built it, we do have the ability to go up.
Okay.
I call it 1 floor, but it's really 2 because we use a mezzanine level.
Yeah.
The trouble is if I built that today.
Well, I'm not saying on this particular building.
Yeah.
But what I was wondering was, in the new building, are you going to be doing that kind of concept?
Yes.
So that we can
We
look at that kind of.
that.
Yeah, and from what he's saying too, I was gonna say that I remember when we built this jail, at that time, there was a lot of critics that said, we're not building it big enough at that time.
Yeah.
So, like what he's saying, if we're gonna build this, we're gonna do this again, build it for expansion up. You're gonna block the view of probably some people in those nice condos over there, but that's something, the commission's gonna have to figure out, I'm sure, but, that would be, cause as you said, we're growing, and I've watched the violent crime rate in Sioux Falls go up over the last 2 years significantly, and it has a lot to do with growth. I was watching this, the mayor's listening and learning session, and there was an older lady there who's lived here her whole life. I'd say she's probably 80, and she told the mayor, you have basically some problems with growth. She didn't bring up the crime, but she brought up jobs, and like you said, predicting the growth and how much, with growth comes crime. And it's a reality, period. You know that, you work in this. And so it comes to a time where I think that the commission, the city council, and they do talk, need to go, what are we gonna do to combat crime, but also make growth happen? It's a big question.
It is. I mean, those are huge things facing our community, and maybe you can talk to a little bit about the projections and what model is used, because that's one of the concerning areas. But to answer one thing about the adding on, is actually 15 years ago when we built this, thinking of that, because our last jail, the old public safety building,
I
was never
recently
designed.
got a tour of it in its current
I'll
condition.
take you over there today if you wanna go
Oh
there.
my God.
But if it was never built to go up, that was the best blessing that we ever received when it was time to rebuild, because it wasn't even an option that we considered going up, because we couldn't. The current 400-bed jail is built to go up 2 floors or one section, but that would not give us
Anywhere near it.
near the number of beds we need when we're replacing the correction center. But it's still an option there for the future. And all of the plans that we've looked at, and we're in the early master plan stages, but we've been working with TSP and Shive Adderley, the architects. And that is absolutely to have the ability to go up additional levels to meet the growth needs. Now, there are other options out there that address what you're talking about. One of them is, and I think Pennington County did this years ago, and that was to build the shell and just not finish it off, have the cells ready, don't put in your technology, don't put in, all the wiring and things, because it's all changed in 10 years, but then be able to expand into those areas as the growth happens.
What was beautiful about what happened at Sioux Valley, and I hate to keep bringing that one up, but and what I've noticed at this courthouse, when they did go up, they were able to redesign it to meet the demands of the day, versus thinking, oh wow, in 10 years we should build it, and because in 10 years we'll fill it up, and then when 10 years comes along, technology has changed so much, the criminal justice system has changed so much, medical has changed so much, that, oh, we gotta go in and rip all this out and redo it before we can do anything. And I'm more of a person that says, let's build a foundation good and solid.
Yeah.
So as we need it, we can do it, and we've learned the lessons on several projects here in town where everything was done very short-sighted, or we spent the money on things that we actually didn't need to spend it on today. We used up our bonding to do this when we really should have done it this way. And okay, we bit the bullet. This first part was the hardest, but if you went up there to the Sioux Valley building, you actually see the girders. The beams are actually sticking out of the building yet, and they could still attach onto it and go up. They didn't have to tear the roof off. They didn't have to do anything until the last minute, and that didn't disrupt any of the patient care in the rest of the building. They did a similar thing here. It's just pop the covers off and go.
Right. And that's often a critic. And I know you don't deal with this because you're part of the law enforcement side, but part of the criticism that people have of government is, how is it, and I'm sure it goes on all over the country, I know it does because I talk to friends that live in similar sized cities, how is it that when government builds a building, it costs twice as much as when, a private entity builds a building? Like Bruce points out, Sioux Valley, they planned ahead, and obviously the county's different than the city. But I've seen this happen several times in the city. We built a building, it's not working, it's, a public building, and we gotta expand, or we didn't do it right, or whatever. I don't wanna go on that too long, but I have a different question. Saw the story in the paper today about Lincoln County, and I was really confused by this. I think it's great that they wanna give you guys money for 100 beds. I think that's what Jim Schmidt or Commissioner Schmidt was suggesting. But why doesn't Lincoln County just build their own jail? They have the money. I mean, you gotta admit to that. I think the county, it's one of the wealthiest counties in the state. Or the residents, but they have the property tax revenue. Why don't they build their own jail in Canton?
Well, I mean, you probably have to ask Commissioner Schmidt that, but the reality is regional jails, regional detention centers, all those things are very common, especially in jurisdictions that are blended like ours, with the city of Sioux Falls having so many residents in Lincoln County. And so we've had a long historic relationship. I met with Sheriff Johnson just today and had discussions about the jail again. Quite frankly, that's what they prefer to do, is what they've done in the past. So when we built the last jail, we had 100 empty beds. They took maybe 20 of them, and then they pay us not only what our daily cost is, but they pay us the cost of the building on a daily rate. It's the debt service is within the daily rate. that's what they may end up if something happens. That may be one of the business models that we would have to do with Lincoln County, because we're not sure if they can bond for construction dollars outside of their county. So there are some things they're looking at there, but whether we get a check up front and guarantee them X number of beds, whether that's 25, 50, or 100, or they just pay what our bond payment would be on their daily rate. Either way, for us, if you were in business, which I'm in business, I mean, you would, if you're building a jail and you know you need, I mean, I want you to talk a little bit about the numbers because they are concerning. But if you build a jail and you go, look, we're gonna open on first day with 120 beds, I think the citizens of Sioux Falls would say, Sheriff, we'd like you to fill about 100 of those beds at about $90 a day and take in $9,000 a day in offsetting revenue to help pay for the current jail. And then as our own needs grow up, maybe they'll go slower than we predict, maybe they'll go faster, but we have that growth room that you use it as a business model to say, look, we're gonna get that. And not only are we gonna get our cost, but we're gonna get cost plus. We're gonna get some extra money for us doing it as opposed to Lincoln County. Put yourself in the Lincoln County Sheriff's position. Would you rather be responsible for a 400-bed jail, or would you rather the commission write a check to Minnehaha County to be responsible for, you know, all the lawsuits that occur with jails, the, you know, people die in custody, people, you know, all the different things that happen, the medical issues that we deal with. Their jails don't come without a lot of headaches. Quite frankly, maybe they want to build a big jail and we'll pay them a rent payment, but either way, and that's one thing. But the other part of your question though is I want to talk about the city of Sioux Falls and Lincoln County, and that is.
So would we.
Yeah, and I understand where they're coming from. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. It's like, why do we want to deal with headache and building a jail when we can just send it over there? And then.
But we are I just want to throw one thing in. We are all Second Circuit here. You know, so things that happen here, the judges are here that go down to Canton and back and forth, and they do this, so they could actually, you know, the customer all has to go through the tunnel and up to the courtroom if needed.
Right.
You know, so and they've got the capability to do things. I understand now.
Electronic, you know, over the telephone, or I mean, over the television.
Closed circuit television and that kind of stuff now. So it isn't as critical that the inmate actually go to Canton anymore as it used to be.
Yeah, certain hearings are able to do that way, but a lot of the bigger hearings, there is a transport. But one of the other transport issues is, if Lincoln County builds a jail, where are they gonna build it? You know, are they gonna build it in Canton? Because what that means then is a Sioux Falls police officer arrests somebody at 58th and Marion Road, goes to Canton with.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, and that's the other thing. I understand this is really the city jail too, so, I mean, and the city goes into Lincoln County.
Well, we're not, for sure, and
Yeah.
quite frankly, if we get beyond our capacity to the point that I can't house any Lincoln County prisoners, that's one issue. But what if I get to the point that I can't even intake Lincoln County prisoners? Today, that would mean if a police officer in Sioux Falls arrests somebody at 58th and Marion Road, they'd need to drive to Elk Point and back with their cover car at 2 in the morning. And that's the kind of business model that I think the citizens would say, we won't accept that. And so that's why I'm trying to be a good partner with Lincoln County in particular, because they are our biggest user. They've kind of indicated indirectly and even personally that they would prefer to do something together as opposed to them building separate. Here's what happens: it's inefficient for them, quite frankly, to build separate because it's very hard for us to find nursing staff in the jail. They'll have to compete with me for what we pay nurses. They'll have to have their own food service for their jail. They have to have their own laundry, and right now we have that all centralized and contracted out. Could they do it with the same vendors? Maybe, but they'd have to go through all that process. And there's some efficiencies. I mean, I think our food service provider is able to provide such a low rate, you know, about $1 a meal, because of the volume that we have here and the fact that we have a $3 million kitchen that provides that, and it's got a capacity of 1,000 inmates. So we're really geared up to handle that, but we're not geared up to handle a building. And
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on. Let's go. Come on.